Humble reader, the Ton are going back in time. Does that sound familiar? You guessed it. It's none other than our favorite Lady Whistledown. Netflix's Bridgerton has successfully swept fans off their feet for 2 consecutive seasons now. After the Duke and Duchess's steamy yet romantic love story in the first season, we got to see Anthony finally seeking a Viscountess for himself in season 2. With all of that buzz around Bridgerton, it's only fair that we get to know more about how it all started. Here's all the hot gossip about the prequel of Bridgerton. Wait, what prequel? If you haven't already heard, then we're assuming you live under a rock. Bridgerton is getting a prequel that centers around the Ton's most esteemed Queen Charlotte. Now, she might be very picky in choosing her diamond every season, but apparently it wasn't always like that. In March 2022, Netflix and Shondaland announced that they are all set to create a new limited series that will show viewers how the Queen rose to prominence and power. That's definitely something we'd love to see. What's the prequel about? For the eagle-eyed viewers who have keenly followed Bridgerton over the past 2 seasons, it's already obvious that we don't know much about Queen Charlotte. Despite her extravagant lifestyle, she's still struggling with her husband's illness, like we saw very clearly in season 2. The prequel will give us insight into the young queen's extraordinary marriage to King George. From what we've heard, this marriage was one great love story, as it was the beginning of a complete societal shift. In some ways, young Queen Charlotte and King George are who made the Ton that we know as Bridgerton today. How did the cast react? Prequels are all about origin stories, and we're super excited to see this one. Obviously, Golda Rosheuvel will be coming back as Queen Charlotte. As far as we can tell, she was all ears for any talks about getting an origin story on the show. A few set photos featuring Rosheuvel were recently leaked, where she's all dressed up in her signature attire and scowl as Queen Charlotte. She appeared to be dressed for what looked like a funeral, but the actress was well in character as she always is. Seems like Rosheuvel is 100% ready to reprise her role as the ever-charming and witty Queen Charlotte. In a recent interview, she hinted a little at what fans can expect to see from the upcoming limited Netflix series. She said that we would be seeing a much younger Queen Charlotte, since it's an origin story, but there's no film date or proper scripts ready at the moment. Rosheuvel also added that she's, quote, really looking forward to what's going to come, unquote. She said that they're still going to be in the world of Bridgerton and not moving an inch away from the place they call home. She continued saying that the idea of a prequel is really clever, simply because it keeps everyone, including the viewers, on the same Bridgerton track. Speaking of her role as Queen Charlotte, Rosheuvel said that it's going to be an interesting journey to look at where the Queen came from. There are probably many things that happened to her which led to her becoming the way she is in the Bridgerton that we now know and love. Other original cast members in the prequel. Speaking of the Queen, there are 2 more original Bridgerton cast members that are returning for the prequel. The first is Adjoa Andoh, our absolute favorite Lady Danbury. We might know Lady Danbury as a strong and independent woman now, but there was definitely a time when she was overridden by her dominating husband. Still, she's always been a close friend of the Queen, and exploring that relationship would be an absolute delight. Speaking to the press, Adjoa Andoh said that the relationship between Lady Danbury, Lady Bridgerton, and the Queen are very long-lived, and that's exactly what the prequel is going to tell us about. Andoh also added that since Shonda Rhimes is writing it, she expects it to be nothing less than fabulous. Like Andoh said, Lady Bridgerton also plays a significant role in this prequel origin story. Ruth Gremmel is all set to return as the Mother of the Year, Violet Bridgerton. Of course, she isn't going to be a mother yet in the prequel, mainly because this limited series focuses more on the undying friendship between the power trio than the Bridgertons themselves, the young Queen and Lady Danbury. When we talk about origin stories, we obviously need younger versions of the characters that we already know and love. This means that we'll be seeing young Queen Charlotte much before she actually took her role as the Queen, along with young Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton. India Amartefu has been cast as young Queen Charlotte, who gets married to the extremely mysterious King of England. Netflix does a really good job at keeping things under wraps until they are officially released, but we still know a few things about this young queen who's about to take over the Ton soon. Back then, she was just a little girl who was married off to the rather mysterious King of England, much against her own will. We expect to see young Charlotte arriving in London and immediately realizing that she's not exactly what the royals were expecting to see. Instead of being welcomed with open arms, the young queen has to learn how to navigate around the palace and the Ton, alongside her extremely unpredictable husband. We can't wait to see how India Amartefu takes on that role and delivers it on screen. we'll also be seeing Arsema Thomas making her television debut as young Agatha Danbury. The friendship between Lady Danbury and Queen Charlotte is set to begin in a way when Agatha uses Charlotte to discover her own way in society. Agatha quickly became the Queen's right hand as her guiding light, telling her all about the divided social scene and intricacies of marriage that are pivotal for this ton. During all of this chaos, we wonder when and how Agatha found her own voice and became who we now know and love as the iconic Lady Danbury. While we still don't know who is being cast as young Violet Bridgerton, we expect her to be played by another talented actress who will undeniably make us love the character. Who else is new? When Netflix decided to explore the origin story of the Queen, they obviously had to give us a young king, too. So they've cast Corey Milcreast as young King George, who is incredibly handsome but still quite a mystery. According to the character description, we already know that King George will no longer have to bow down to the restrictions placed on him as the crown of the ton. Instead, it's time for him to face his hidden demons now that he has to share his personal space and bed with the new wife. We'll also be seeing Michelle Fairley as Princess Augusta, a young and ambitious woman whose main goal is to keep her family in power. This princess doesn't back down on anything and needs to secure her son's position as the monarch, despite the changing social scene and modernization of the ton. Other cast members currently include Sam Clement as young Brimsley, Richard Cunningham as Lord Bute, and Cyril Nree as Lord Danbury. We really can't wait for Netflix to release this prequel already. At least it'll make it easier to wait for Bridgerton Season 3. Has Bridgerton always hinted at a prequel? It's hard to say whether Queen Charlotte's origin story was always the plan for Bridgerton creators. As far as we know, they've only briefly explored the topic of Queen Charlotte's damaged marriage with King George. Back in Season 1, we only got to know little about King George's mental health issues and how the Queen always tried to keep it under wraps. Of course, her marriage was far from perfect and she didn't want to confront that problem. Then came Season 2, where we saw one interaction between the Queen and King. Edwina Sharma delivered quite the emotional speech when George ran into the room unexpectedly and was confused about where he was. He didn't seem to know how much time had passed since him and Charlotte were young either. With just these two little hints, we never would have expected a whole series on the King and Queen's marriage. Don't get us wrong though, we're still super hyped about it. What gave Shondaland the inspiration? Shonda Rhimes never took credit for being the brains behind this prequel of Bridgerton. Instead, it was actually Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos who gave her the idea. According to Rhimes, Ted gave her a phone call and asked her why they weren't doing a show on Queen Charlotte. He also immediately asked her whether she would be willing to write it. Rhimes said in a recent interview that this conversation was what got her inspired to do the prequel. Ted also mentioned how he's so obsessed with Queen Charlotte that he always refers to her as the Beyoncé of Bridgerton. Apparently, the Netflix CEO also loves the Queen's wigs and is wishing for somebody to send him one too. For anyone wanting to become buddies with the Netflix CEO, we'd highly recommend sending him some over-the-top wig that screams Queen Charlotte from a mile. That'll get you to his close friends list pretty soon. And that's a wrap for this video. What do you think about the upcoming Bridgerton prequel? Let us know in the comments below. Like always, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. See you next time.